Well, I've been spending all my money on weed and pills, trying to write a song that'll pay the bills, but it ain't came yet. Guess I have to rob a bank. I guess it could be worse, ain't that bad. At least I ain't sitting no Baghdad in the middle of the hot day of death, sitting in a tank. Well, time the wife talks, so baby gets mentioned. I'm so broke, I can't pay attention. Lord, how it tears me up to have to see her crying. Well, I've been spending all my nights on the internet, looking for a clue, but ain't found one yet. Just a bunch of Mopars, guitars, and other shit I can't find. Well, now, Lord, if you can hear me, won't you throw a damn dog a bone? If a devil shows up with a deader deal, his whole soul's going down. Oh, I sing them real pretty, sing them real sad, and all the people in the crowd say ain't happy. Well, now call me King Turd up here on Shit Mountain. If you want it, you can have the crown. Well, I've been sitting on my ass like a bump on a log, watching Andy and old Boss Hogg. I guess I ought to get up and go out and find a job. Instead of sitting on the couch trying to find the next line, I'm sure there's gotta be a better use of my time, like figuring out which one of them banks I'm gonna go rob. Well, the name of the game is hurry up and wait low, but that ain't putting no food on my plate or gas in my car. I drive a Bronco. Oh, now, Lord, if I could just give me a record deal, I might not have to worry about my next meal, but I'd still be trying to figure out what the fuck rhymes with Bronco. Oh, now, Lord, if you can hear me, won't you throw a damn dog a bone? 'Cause if a devil shows up with a better deal, his whole soul's going down. Oh, I sing them real pretty, sing them real sad, and all the people in the crowd say ain't happy. Well, they call me King Turd up here on Shit Mountain. If you want it, you can have the crown. Well, they call me King Turd up here on Shit Mountain. If you want it, you can have the crown. Oh, I'm getting pretty tired of state things are in. Sometimes I feel like cutting the vein, just watching it bleed. Oh, I'm tired of laying it down, getting nothing on the other end. And people only want to be your friend when you got something they need. Oh, I'm getting pretty tired of being treated like competition, when the only one that can hold me down is inside my head. Oh, what's the honk you gotta do around here? Get a little recognition. Starting to think it might be worth more to everybody if I was dead. Oh, now some days you kill it, and some days you just choke. Some days you blast off, some days you just smoke. Oh, now maybe I do, Lord, maybe I don't. Everybody says to be there, but in the end, y'all know they won't. Oh, I'm getting pretty tired, sitting around wasting time. And I'm tired of taking blame when I ain't done nothing wrong. Oh, I'm How do y'all play and dress up trying to sing them old country songs? Oh, now, some days you kill it, some days you choke. Some days you blast on, some days you just smoke. Oh, now maybe I do, Lord, maybe I don't. Everybody says to be there, but in the end, y'all know they won't. Oh, now maybe I do, Lord, maybe I don't. Well, they all say to be there, but in the end.
All right, guys. It looks like we are live. We are kicking it. We got guest up. We got data. We got rankings. We got a lot of people at least back in chat. At least half of you that were here the last time are back, which is good. Looks like everybody else is finding the Twitter link slowly and getting back in here. Real quick, guys, don't do it now because I don't want you all to go to guest and break the site again. But next time you get on guest reports, click on the ads. If you ever order anything off of Amazon, use his link, do the search, purchase stuff, and get it going. It would be great to do and support him. Because I literally could not do this show with any kind of decent quality without him. So it would really suck. But and you know what? It looks like... Is my voice choppy or just the camera? Let me know. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, or if it's just the live video stream that's kind of chopping around. If it is, I'll just blow that out of there right now so we can get going. But anyways, what we'll do is we're going to go through the Division 1 recruit rankings, and then we're going to go through the Division 1 AA recruit rankings. And I think what we're going to do is actually do another stream, back-to-back streams tomorrow, where we'll do preseason predictions and go through that. But definitely a lot of cool, interesting stuff. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Oh yeah, sorry for the hood, sorry for all this mess. Just started feeling sick. Hopefully, probably catching what my wife got. But yeah, so I'm in. We don't want to see you blowing. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Anyways, all right. So let's jump right into rankings. Division 1A. A new surprise at the top. We got Laswell of Boston College. I mean, he's had some great recruiting classes recently, and kind of for a long time. So ended up with the #1 class this year. Not a lot of competition, it really didn't look like for him. And if you look through it, you can definitely see why. I mean, he's got three of the best position players. Not the three best position players, sorry. He's got three guys that are #1 at their position. He's got the #1 O-lineman, the #1 defensive lineman, and then #1 wide receiver. And then you throw in the #3 tight end and #4 running back. I mean, this class just screams great. And even on the defensive side, you got 4-star, 5-star recruits all over the place. It's pretty awesome. So great class by him. I know the guys in the Slack chat were talking about how UConn didn't have as good of a class as Boston College did. They are extremely close. And I think it was came to the census that UConn has everybody and their mother in their 180. Boston College definitely does not. So they're kind of spared that a little bit, which is nice. But nice to see a non-elite up there, even though I think a lot of us would consider Boston College an elite. But that's all that matters. Can't game plan, move on, nothing to see here. Yeah, I mean, he can't game plan, but this isn't about game planning and ranking teams or how well they're going to do. This is strictly on recruiting. And he got the #1 spot. Nortornos comes in at #2 with Penn State. You know, nobody's surprised there. Ever since he's moved there, he's been doing this over and over again. We don't expect anything to change. And he's got the #2 roster, but another great recruiting effort from him. As over at USC, this is definitely one of his better ones. He was #1 just 2 seasons ago. But besides that, you know, he's been out of the top 10 a couple times. Kind of fringe middle to late top 10. Not the best recruiting. It's hard out there in the West Coast. There's not as many recruits, and you do have quite a bit of competition right around you. Even though he is the only elite, it is still tough. But, you know, another great class coming out of the Trojans here. Skilled position-wise, you know, it's pretty loaded with the wide receiver and the running back. And everything else is kind of average with the decent QB. Hopefully he's got some good upside, and he'll be even better. Missouri. So I definitely want to talk about Missouri, and in particular the Big 12 on this show. Missouri does it again. You know, his last 3 classes were 7, 10, and 4. Hypnotoad is just absolutely killing it there. You know, he's going into an area that has some coaches, but has some great coaches. You got to compete with elites over there. And you really got to find a lot of recruits in certain areas. So what I wanted to do is actually bring up this current coaches map, which if you didn't know this exists, it's on our Wilkinson Central website. I think it's Jag who updates this every season with coaches, what teams they went to and so forth, so you can see actually where everybody's at, which is pretty handy. It's a fun thing. I love looking at it. But anyways, so Hypnotoad, Missouri. So he's over here in the state of Missouri. In his vicinity, he's obviously got Kansas, which is Kalichak, who's not he's not a strong recruiter. At least hasn't proven to be. I believe he was at U of A before this. You got Jason Freeman up there in Nebraska to your north. Just below you, you're going to have somebody at Arkansas. And then you're going to have all these SEC teams, even some Conference USA teams. And then really you got this big chunk of change where you're the closest school to these guys, and there's a lot of recruits over here. Now you're still going to have some of these guys over here, whether it's Notre Dame, whether it's DePaul, and some other schools that can dip down here as well. Minnesota, definitely can and will, but there's nobody in Iowa right now. There's nobody in Southern Illinois right now. In Kansas, he pretty much went in and got a ton of great players there. Kalichak kind of just let him have them. And then Oklahoma, he has a ton of talent around him. He can pretty much get who he wants. And then, little old Missouri over here can kind of go and pick up the rest that fall through. It's a pretty great spot. I don't see a lot of coaches that take Missouri, and the fact that he's doing such a great job there really proves how good of a coach he is. So that's Hypnotoad, and that's his class. Great class when we dive into it. Number 2 linebacker, number 1 DB, number 1 quarterback, number 6 DB. I mean, defense, offense, he's got a little bit of everything. The dude just absolutely killed it. Love seeing that. So let's go back, and before we hop down the rankings, look how many Big 12 are here. If we just go look at the Big 12, they had the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, and then the 11 and the 12. Obviously, there's a little drop-off after that with Kalichak and Slick Nick at Tennessee Tech, but they have 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 6 in the top 12. That's pretty insane. And they have 4 in the top 10 with Nebraska just out in 11. And Nebraska had, I believe, the number 1 class last season. That's pretty amazing. And if you look at the Big 12, I mean, it's this area right here. This is it. This is the Big 12. And really what the difference is between this and, let's say, even the Big East. If we're looking at the Big East and the Big 10, this is the area that you recruit in the Big 12. Look how spread out all these teams are. You got a lot of room. You got a lot of room to be the closest to somebody, to have a distance advantage on somebody. There's a lot of recruits in this area. Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Missouri all get a lot of recruits. And then if you're looking in the Big East and maybe even the Big 10, yeah, there's a ton of really, really good recruits out here. But look how close all these teams are. I mean, look at all the schools right on top of each other. North Carolina, you got 3 that you can drive to in 20 minutes if you need to. It's insane. State of Washington, Virginia, it's the same thing. Schools on top of each other. So no matter what, yeah, there's a lot of guys, but there are a ton of schools sitting on top of you. Ton of elites that are really close to each other, especially in this kind of area right here. And yeah, I mean, it shows you why the Big 12 constantly is out recruiting other conferences. And it's just because recruit distribution and how spread out some of those teams are. I know Oklahoma and Texas kind of also have, they're kind of at a point to where one has a lot of scholarships, the other one doesn't that season. And maybe it's not every season, but maybe it's every other. It is kind of how that cycle goes. So, I mean, they're for the most time avoiding each other because one always seems to have a bigger advantage than the other one. And then kind of these other schools, there's enough recruits that we can kind of pick and choose. Even being a non-BCS school down in Houston, I find my guys just fine. I have been taking a couple sims, maybe every season. I had a full one, I think, last season. But, I can still find my guys, even just being in Conference USA. There's plenty of good recruits for it. I've even been able to fight off some BCS sometimes. So it's definitely a great area if you're in the Big 12 to try to find some recruits. And it's definitely pretty easy to see why if you just kind of dig into it a little bit. All right, so we won't go too far into it. Texas A&M, they came in at number 7. They had another great class. I don't want to say another great class. This is the first time Arcade's been able to crack the top 10 at Texas A&M, but it's really nice to see because, once again, it's another Big 12 school, and it's another Texas school that's able to find recruits. And, I mean, this one's just loaded. Running backs, wide receiver that, I wouldn't say he stole from me, but we battled over and he won. So it's nice to see him go there. And then obviously the DB and some decent DBs down here. Obviously the biggest thing that worries you is that quarterback a little bit. Hopefully he's got some high potential and can get signed a little bit, or ends up being and grows a little bit more there. But great to see out of Arcade a Cowboy in the Texas A&M Aggies. Well, that's weird. Why did it do that? Getting hot over here. All righty. So Notre Dame. Wait, that's full rosters. You can tell I'm a little out of practice. I'm all over the place. All right, so we talked about Missouri. Love his class. Obviously, Texas did what Texas does. So does Oklahoma. Had a great class. Paul keeps doing what he's doing there in Wisconsin. That's another coach that is in a great spot that not a lot of people go to. He's got a lot of room to work with. Just in this area, it's really only 2 schools. You do have somebody at Marquette, but he's also getting a good class, and Paul just continues to kill it. Really like what Paul's been able to do. That dude can coach. He can recruit. He can coach. I'd hate to see what he could do with the elite. We'd all kind of have to watch out. But once again, another school that you don't see, populated very often, coming through in a tough world like Wilkinson and recruiting well. You got Notre Dame coming in number 5, CFB fan. This is one of his better classes in a while. I mean, obviously last season he probably wasn't really around, so ended up with the 59. But he kind of has that every once in a while where he falls back. So will be scary to see what CFB fan can do with a class full of great recruits. Especially on the defensive side. If I look at these linebackers, the defensive linemen, really the DBs, right? When I look at a team, if I think they have playoff potential, I look at the defense and how they're recruiting there and what that talent is, and this team's going to be good. They're going to be good now. These defensive backs can definitely start on most teams, and they're only going to go up from there. So it'll be fun to see. So CFB fan back at it again. Jason Freeman at 11, Colorado at 12, Tennessee at 13. Husker 1-1 with Temple. Temple's a great spot to recruit from. Definitely much harder in Wilk than it is other worlds because we're so populated. But he did come in at number 14 this season. Definitely his best since he's been there. Maybe figured something out. So definitely something to keep an eye on in the future seasons of how well and how much he keeps improving. Virginia was kind of a surprise to see up here in 15, and then I dove into him, and he was even 16 last season, so he's definitely starting to figure something out in recruiting. Maybe he's just got a little bit more time to do it and pay attention, but if Dalai Lama can put together a good game plan, he's definitely got the talent to do it. Arizona State, so this is no surprise. So there's no coach at U of A, right? Before I say that, let's look. Yeah, there's no coach at U of A. Kalachak, I believe, was there last season, if not the season before he got fired. So with an empty Arizona, or with one school in Arizona instead of 2, it is much easier to get a better recruiting class. You can kind of just see, right, that huge jump. You get the best. There's usually 3 to 4 good, solid, 4-star, 5-star recruits in Arizona. You get them all to yourself. It's too far for California to come. He can't waste money because he's battling people over there with USC, UCLA, and Cal and so forth. They're definitely not going to come bug you. Colorado can try, but it's pretty far for him still. He's going to be at a money disadvantage, and he's probably battling other people as well. So it's great. If you have that state all to yourself, you can definitely do damage, and you can put together top 10 recruiting classes there if you do it right, and as long as nobody comes in at U of A, but we'll see how long that lasts. And I do believe he's on the verge of possibly getting fired too, so there is kind of that may be opening up for somebody. LSU with MP Mershon comes in at 17. Hat Rock does a great job at his 3rd year here at Arkansas, making the big jump there. Let's see. Number 3, punter. Punters are really hard. Punters and kickers, good ones, are really hard to get in a crowded conference or a crowded world. I definitely noticed that, especially being with the Division I AA team this year. I couldn't find a punter for cheap to save my life, and everybody's battling over them. But Hat Rock at Arkansas, pulling in a good class. This is going to be a good, solid class for him. And even this offensive lineman who's a number 125, if he has even decent potential, that dude's going to be in the 80s, which is all that matters by the time he's a senior. So that guy's going to be great. These DBs, I'm sure, are going to end up being up there as well. So hats off to Arkansas. I mean, that's a tough place to recruit. You got a little bit room in the state, but I mean, you're going to have LSU, you're going to have Alabama probably trying to take some of the best recruits. You still got Oklahoma, who's close to you as well. Tennessee can come in really if they want to. So definitely a tough place, definitely a hard place to find success, but he's doing it at least this season, and I wouldn't expect anything less. Lions fan in Michigan, solid at the 19. Stanford with Hitman at 20. Minnesota. DePaul. I mean, DePaul's got another great spot that we've talked about before up here in Chicago. You got kind of the whole state of Illinois. Obviously, Missouri's going to come in and get some guys. Michigan, Wisconsin, those guys are going to come down. Notre Dame can come into Illinois, but at least you're going to have the distance advantage and the money. And by the way, you're BCS school, and you probably got bowl money to play with. Maybe not as much as in the past, but you're still going to have it. Pittsburgh, UCLA. I'm a little surprised I don't see more California schools. Obviously, Stanford. I'd like to see some of these guys a little bit higher. I mean, there's a lot of talent over there. It's not like they're as close as in the East Coast, right? You got 2 down here, 2 up here. You got a non BCS team right there in the middle, right? And there's not much else. So you're really recruiting California, obviously some Southern Oregon and Nevada. But there is definitely a lot of talent there. So I'm a little surprised some of these teams aren't higher. I don't know if they're beating each other up and then taking sims or what. Maybe something to look at for the future. Miami looks like they had a bad cycle. I mean, that's one where as long as South Florida is good, you can really fill a whole roster with stuff within your 360. And then that can a lot of times end you up with the #1 class. Going down the line, no big surprises. I ended up with the 28th, and I took 2 sims. I was the highest rated non-BCS, which is always my at least minimum goal I want to hit. But I was about, I don't know, a day out of signing a full class with that wide receiver that Texas A&M and Arcade Cowboy ended up taking. So if I would have gotten him and then I was targeting a backup, I definitely would have had enough money for instead of going all out to try to beat him. But, I ended up with a good tight end. Tight ends were funny this year. There were the 3 best tight ends were actually all within 180 miles, and I think 2 of them within 60. I went on the guy who I considered the second best, but he had high potential because I figured Texas would take the first. Ended up both the other tight ends were sims until maybe day 2, and then out-of-state guys started jumping in. And it was a really interesting recruiting cycle or recruiting season this time around. Texas obviously has a lot of recruits. I already talked about that, but we had a lot of outside guys coming in. Auburn was coming all the way over. That's Alabama. I guess I should learn where Auburn is. Auburn came all the way over from Alabama and was picking guys off that got left sim or that were kind of falling through the cracks. I saw Crondon, and I've noticed this in a couple worlds now with Crondon. Came all the way from Buffalo. He was jumping on sim guys. Unfortunately for him, I waited a cycle to see who was jumping on who. He had jumped on I think an O-lineman maybe that was real close to me, and then I was able to beat him off of it. But there's a lot of recruits down here, and people are finding them through the cracks. So it's definitely what you have to do to make it in this world. You definitely have to put your time in and do the research to find those hidden gems. But it's nice to see people do it. One thing of note is those teams that were coming in. Crondon's at 34. That's good for. I think it's the third. Yeah, it's the 3rd highest non-BCS, so that's good. And it's a tough place to recruit up there. So you definitely have to go cross country like he is. Schoolie Me in his first season here at Central Florida ended up with the 41 ranked. So that's another good place to find some guys falling through the crack if you can. Louisville with Osball, Husker fan. His first year at Cal. Let's take a look at what he was able to do. He didn't really have any bowl money. It's hard out there in the West, so we'll kind of have to judge him by probably his next year when he really has money. But knowing him, I have to imagine that these guys have some high potential and some high work ethic. So we'll see where they pan out. All right, let's take a look at this list again, and then let's see. So Arizona State, Michigan, UCLA. Florida State, Bad Axe. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the hardest elite. I mean, nothing too spectacular since you've been there. I mean, nothing too spectacular since before him either. So, it's really hard to judge him on that. But it's definitely going to be probably the hardest elite, I would think, here in Wilkinson. So being sandwiched between all those other ones in a heavy populated area. The Grump Boy, Florida, you got Florida, you got 2 elites out of the top 25. That's definitely interesting and something to take note of, right? But that just shows you how hard this world actually is. Colorado State, a sim. I think that's our highest rated sim. Somebody said they ended up with a good quarterback. Let's find out. I don't think Z's in here. So once Z watches this, uh-oh. Don't break guess. Don't break on me now. Once Z32, I see him down here at 45. I'd love to just get him to break down and let me know what happened this season. Obviously, this is not typical of him, especially being at a place like Rutgers. But I'd love to know what he ran into, why this happened. Did they have to take sims? Was it just people that jumped on late? Was there just not as much nearby as he thought there would be, or what? All right, guys. Let's see what's going on. All right, who's on guess? All you guys get off. You're ruining it. You're ruining it. Come on, come on, come on. All right, well, I guess that's all we're going to talk about on Division 1A, as I believe this screen broke. Maybe. Is guest down? Anybody? Can anybody? Oh, okay. It's somewhat back, so we're not gonna touch it. Other than that, like I said, Z32, I'd love to talk to him and get his take of what happened. Maryland comes in with 40. That's definitely a lower one for Phil. But I know, yeah, he went all in for one player, but he got his QB. So that's definitely something to note. Okay, 1 second. Dog scratching at the door. 1 second. So it's definitely something you have to pay attention to. Guys that go all in on one player, their recruit class are definitely going to suffer. But if they get that player and they can afford to have those holes and maybe cut some people in the future, and then fill them back up the next season, it's definitely something worth doing, especially if it's a quarterback. I run the shotgun. The quarterback is everything. Those years that I have to get my shotgun and I have to get you always assume TD was a cat guy. No way. I hate cats. I got a German Shepherd, so who's scared of cats, but that's beside the point. Anyways, running that shotgun offense, this year I need that quarterback in waiting, and I try to get one every year. This year I already had 4 because I was starting a redshirt junior last year, so I didn't get one this season, so I'll get one next season. But anyways, I will spend way more money on that. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, and defensive backs, in my mind, are the 3 positions that I'm going to spend the most money, and quarterbacks definitely need to get more than anybody else. So that's kind of how I look at it. If I have to take sacrifices in other positions, it's definitely going to happen. Obviously, that's what Phil did this year with Maryland, but he got his guy, and that's all that matters. What really sucks is when you spend all that extra money, you target it, and then you lose that guy, and then the rest of your class is also suffering. So definitely interesting to see there. Ohio State, definitely not good. So that's 3 elites we had out of the top 25 in recruiting. It's hard to recruit there in the Midwest at those elites, but it is what it is. All right, this thing's slowing down on me. So we're going to go through Division I AA real quick. I'm not going to click on these teams just because of what I'm seeing with the site, and I don't want to at least lose the rankings. But I do have some tidbits to talk about. I do have a team in Division I AA, Eastern Kentucky, which I completely blew with recruiting this season. So we don't need to talk about their recruits. We don't need to, oh, shoot. Stream died.